And just let me know if you guys can hear me. Just chat. I'm glad that you let me know that the question and answer works, Darren. Thank you so much. Again, welcome to Say What's Now. This is our first webcast together. So we're going to work out all these kinks together. Thanks, Darren. And we're going to get started talking about Black History Month. What I was saying at the top of the show is that we're already 6 weeks into the new year, which is just crazy. We've been, I know everybody out there has been working so hard that 6 weeks has flown by, and we're already more than halfway past Black History Month of 2016. And as many of our friends across the interwebs have been talking about, Black History Month has been a very interesting Black History Month for 2016. For the past about week and a half, we have been getting a lot of interesting things in the world of entertainment, and social justice have really collided. So let's get started talking about that. First, talking about Beyonce, of course, one of the most celebrated and decorated people in pop culture, period, Black women, period, shut the interwebs down last Saturday with her new song and video, Formation. A friend of mine sent me a text message saying, oh, Beyonce has a new song out called Formation. And let me just tell you that for off the rip, I am not a Beyonce stan. I'm sorry, I'm not. I appreciate her music. I love what she can do, but I'm not a Beyonce stan. But I completely went stan mode for this song. This song was and is everything. It's everything for the Black community. It's everything for Black women. And really just Beyonce once again saying that, one, she could care less about what y'all think about her. She is out here for her child. She's out here for her husband, and she's out here for herself. So what I said, and I hope that you all are saying too, whether if you're a Black woman, Black man, whatever your nationality is hashtag year formation. But this is definitely hashtag year of Beyonce being in formation. And I'm saying for me, it's hashtag for Keela being in formation. It's just been a really good celebration about what she has been trying to do within herself. And as usual, people went completely nuts. You had so many different think pieces about what she was saying, what she wasn't saying. And then you had folks out here talking about, oh, well, she's being racist. Now, that was Saturday. Everybody was having their nice little brunch here in DC and where you are too, probably. And at around 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon, everything shut down when Formation came out. In the next 24 hours, our entire world got rocked. Because what was the next day? The next day was the Super Bowl. And not only did all y'all go, and us too went out to Red Lobster and got us some cheddar bee biscuits from Red Lobster and helped their sales go up 33%. Miss Beyonce decided she was going to go out here and be at the Super Bowl and perform Formation. And that started a whole new wave of controversy because Miss Beyonce dressed up in a Michael Jackson motif, and she dressed up like the Black Panthers. And as you know, the Black Panthers will be celebrating 50 years of their founding later on this year. And so that made the interwebs and the folks that are on the interwebs spewing hate go completely and utterly crazy. And Beyonce didn't say anything. They decided they were going to come over to New York and try to protest. They called her a racist, called her this and that. But the fact of the matter is that Beyonce said, first of all, Beyonce had one of the biggest Super Bowl halftime shows of the last 50 years, or whenever they decided to start halftime shows. Beyonce, I'll say Prince. I am a Prince stan. Prince had an absolutely fantastic Super Bowl halftime show. He did Purple Rain in the Rain. So if you're going to stunt, you're going to stunt in the rain. And that's what Prince did. So I love Prince. Shout out to Prince for what he's doing. Particularly with his political messages that he's been sending out. But we'll get to Prince in a minute. And we'll come back to Prince frequently on this show, Say What Now. But Beyonce performed with Bruno Mars and Coldplay, and I felt sad for Coldplay because nobody cared about Coldplay once Beyonce got out there with her girls and strutted on that field. They cared a little bit about Bruno Mars because of that back and forth between them, but outside of that, nobody really cared. Once Beyonce showed herself onto the scene. And then you had all these think pieces and whatnot talking about Miss Beyonce, and saying that she was creating division, saying that she was anti-cop, anti white people, anti everything else. But what she was is she was pro her. She was pro black. She is um, celebrating her heritage. And shout out to her for doing that at the Super Bowl, the most watched television show every year. And she did it for the 50th anniversary of the Super Bowl. So not only are you going to do it during the most watched television show during the year, you're going to do it when they are celebrating their silver anniversary of the Super Bowl. So they knew what they was getting into, and she got out to them. And shout out to little Miss Blue, who was showing her greatness and her beauty at 4 years old in the video. And you saw her little clips of her, the pictures that Beyonce released of Blue out here making sure that everybody was straight for their for their dance routines or whatever, when Beyonce was doing her practices on Saturday. So it was wonderful to see her do that at the Super Bowl. All this controversy, this faux outrage, y'all can let it go, because anytime if Kid Rock and I, so I like Kid Rock. Kid Rock is a Michigander. I'm from Michigan, and we'll talk about me in a little bit. But Kid Rock is always out here with these Confederate flags. Now, I'm not quite sure how it is that somebody from Michigan is out here celebrating the Confederacy, because we weren't about that life. But, shout out to him for that. But the fact of the matter is he can do that. Then Beyonce can do exactly what she did. And I'm proud of her for doing that. So you got Beyonce out here shutting the people down, talking about her blackness. You had that the day after the Image Awards, where it seems like everybody that was a black celebrity or wannabe black celebrity showed up in Pasadena for the 47th NAACP Image Awards. It looked like it was a packed house there for the Image Awards, and it was good to see folks supporting the Image Awards. I hope that the black celebrities will support it every year, not just when you're trying to protest a fact that there was probably one or two black people that were nominated for an Oscars yet again this year with the Oscars So White controversy. Then you had what else was going on that week? It was just a week of everybody just being super celebrating blackness. Oh, then you had Miss Girl Stacey Dash, who was out here talking about you don't need Black History Month, that you don't need the Image Awards, you don't need this, but then BET clapped back on her so hard. So we don't probably need to go into that, because BET just about did all of our work for us on that. But I would like to say, kind of on that vein, is that some people were trying to talk about Stacey Dash, but also saying that they gave us February as if they didn't know about the origins of Black History Month themselves, that nobody gave us Black History Month. That Black History Month was created, of course, by Carter G. Woodson. We're actually in the 90th year of when he started Black History Week in 1926 to celebrate the fact that of Lincoln's birthday. Obviously, Lincoln was born February 12th in 1809. And that is the origin of Black History Week, and then it evolved to Black History Month. And so for people to say that we were given Black History Month in February, in the shortest month of the year, they too don't realize the origins and don't really know the whole about Black History Month. So those folks also need to kind of get educated as well. But hey, Black History Month 2016 has been a lot. And so then you had, of course, the NAACP's birthday on February 12th. You had the Grammys from last night. And so I don't know how many of you all saw the Grammys last night. So me and my mama was here this weekend, and we were watching the Grammys, and we were kind of bored. But what we were not bored about, we got really together with, was Kendrick Lamar. Kendrick Lamar, for all of those who really listen to hip hop, Kendrick Lamar had one of the best hip hop albums, rap albums, however you want to term the genre, of the year, hands down, is what everybody across the board has been saying about this album. And he decided to get himself up there on that Grammy stage and show completely out. He showed out so well. I watched it again this morning just to try to wrap my mind around the fact that he showed out. He started with him being locked up in chains, in handcuffs and chained with others walking through what it appeared to be a prison area. If you have not seen, go onto YouTube, look at the clip of him before they take it down. Amazing. But the interesting thing about it, if you guys saw it, was the fact that he had somebody playing the saxophone in prison, and just talking about how you can lock up our bodies, but you cannot lock up our minds. You can't chain our culture, our identity. That's the kind of the symbolism that he brought in that part, and talking about how we have the history of being locked up, not just in prison, but also I think he brought a slavery type of element into that as well. Then you had him going over to the fires and bringing his the lyrics from his song and had a backdrop of the fire. And I think that seemed to me it resembled some of the activism, which kind of turned into to the rioting that happened here in Baltimore, but also some other places across the country with the fire. But we also know that fire also has the ability to purify things, and that sometimes you have to go through the fire to get a result or get things to be better than what they are currently are. And have that juxtaposed with his song, Be All Right. We're going to be all right. We're going to have to come through this, but we're eventually going to be all right. And that was an interesting symbolism for me, and I'm interested to hear what you guys have to say about that right now. My fellow Darren is talking about he was still in awe of his performance. It was everything, Darren. You're absolutely right. It was crazy. And I'm still seeing everybody trying to process his performance. And then I heard that he inserted a special verse, and I'm not sure if this is a special verse because he raps really fast, and I'm still trying to process. It's like, come on, Cranes, kind of stay up with it, and I'm trying, but we're going to give it a couple more spins for me to listen to it thoroughly. But he had some lyrics talking about February 26th, and as soon as he said February 26th, I got shivers because, as many of you know, February 26th is the date that that Trayvon Martin was killed in 2012. And so I already knew where he was going when he started to speak about it. And he completely did. Talked about on February 26th, I died, or I lost my life too. And that was just amazing. And him still talking about and making sure that not only that we remember Trayvon, remember the struggle that his family and families like his have gone through these past 4 years, these 3.5 years for Jordan Davis. Today is would have been Jordan Davis's 21st birthday. And just for us to remember all the struggles that we've been going through for the last 4 years, for us not to forget, make sure that we continue our advocacy. It was really important that he mentioned that. And it being All-Star Weekend. If you did not remember, Trayvon Martin was killed when he was coming back from the 7-Eleven during the halftime of the All-Star game. So all of that coming back or pulling together is just amazing, amazing, amazing. I'm so glad that he did that. It's just the symbolism that he pulled together was fantastic. I'm just really pleased that he did that. I'm pleased that we have a lot more conscious artists using their platform and using their artistry to bring light to some of these issues that are going on. I mean, and this has happened throughout history. So this false outrage that people are talking about, oh, you just need to be an artist, you don't need to talk about what's going on in your world. They've been doing that since the beginning of time, since the first we've been doing that forever, talking about what is going on in our communities through our art. James Baldwin did it, Paul Robeson did it, Nina Simone, my birthday twin, she did it. Even folks currently, of course, Jesse Williams is doing it. Now Beyonce, Kendrick Lamar has been doing it. J. Cole, who wasn't celebrated enough for his CD that was out last year, I'm sorry, is doing a lot. We have a lot of people using the gifts that God has given them in whichever form to increase the visibility about what is happening in our communities. And I really, really appreciate it. And then we just have had so much going on in these short 16 days with Black History Month, and just people being unapologetic about talking about Black History Month and why it's so important. And something funny that kind of happened today, one of my best friends, their brother-in-law, was showing about what their kids' project was for in kindergarten, and was saying, oh, that you need to do a little history lesson about Marcus Garvey. But the picture that they were talking about was not Marcus Garvey. It was Booker T. Washington. And so you cannot ask kids to do stuff that you cannot do. That just shows to me that we need to have Black history ingrained in our main curriculum. We cannot keep having, you know, ethnic studies being in a side class, just an elective. It really needs to be ingrained in the current American history and how it's taught in school, for all of us to know what happened, the impact that Black Americans and all Americans have made upon this country. So it's really important that we need to do that. And some of the things that the folks have been saying out here are really illuminating that fact. So I would be really interested to hear what you guys have to say about thus far what's happening in Black History Month as it pertains to social justice issues. But something that has also been happening that folks have been talking about recently, of course, is the 2016 election. And if you're anything like me, you're surrounded by friends who are super interested in the 2016 election, are gearing up for the primary season. I hope that if you guys are in Ohio or in Florida, that you have registered to vote today. Today was the deadline for you to register to vote. So I hope you turn in your voter registration information so that you are able to exercise your right to vote in this presidential primary election that's coming up in your states. If you're like me, you have a little bit more time to register to vote, so you definitely need to go out there and do that. But we have a couple states that are coming up to have their presidential primaries, South Carolina and Nevada. And these two states, of course, have a larger population of Black people and Latino Americans or people of color, and then besides Iowa and New Hampshire, that are predominantly and overwhelmingly white. And so now you have seen the candidates, well, unfortunately, only the Democratic candidates really reaching out to communities of color. We saw today that former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton was in Harlem talking to some civil rights leaders, that current Senator Bernie Sanders will be doing that in DC this week. But you've also seen them, I think Secretary Clinton was in Flint recently talking to folks about the plight that's going on in Flint, and we'll get to that here in just a minute, of course. But she was talking to Black Americans, and Bernie Sanders was actually not too far from my hometown. He was in Ypsilanti, Michigan yesterday. And so hello to all of my friends back home in Ann Arbor. Ypsilanti is a neighboring city of Ann Arbor, and Senator Sanders was there speaking yesterday. But so, all right. So I appreciate folks talking with Black communities, of course. All of us need to be talking, all of the candidates need to talk to all of Americans. So I would really encourage some of these GOP folks to be talking to Black Americans, brown Americans, all of Americans, because you're going to represent all of us. But I understand that it's a primaries, and since a lot of the base is not people of color in the GOP, they don't talk to us until whoever's the nominee, and maybe, if we're lucky, they'll come and talk to us. Allegedly, in 2012, after President Obama beat them again, they were going to have this plan of ideas about how they were going to go and reach out to the Black community or other communities of color. And I'm not quite sure what the result with that is. I don't see them reaching out at all, but I don't know. Anyway, so Senator Clinton was in Harlem today talking with civil rights leaders. She was interesting. I love talking with millennials that are involved with the civil rights movement, that sort of thing. And I appreciate that. I really do, because I think that she needs to hear directly from us. And then she gave a speech at the Schomburg Center, excuse me, in Harlem. But the issue that I have, and I would like to hear what you guys think about it too, is that you can't just talk to all Black crowds about Black issues. I think that you need to be talking to more people, or people of other backgrounds that about issues that affect the Black community. And I would like to see more of that from both candidates, actually, from all candidates, but particularly the both candidates, to talk about the issues that plague the Black community, not just the police involved shootings and not just Flint, but talk about the fact that Black people have double the unemployment rate of white Americans. Talk about the fact that, talk about the corridor shame and how students in South Carolina along the I-95 corridor go to shambled schools with old books, and it's really only because they're in some of the poorest counties in the state of South Carolina, and not because of any really other measurable fact that folks can think about, that people have sued the state of South Carolina for over 20 some odd years to get equity and funding so that those students in the corridor shame can have the same or similar resources that students in other counties in South Carolina are able to have. We need to communicate this with other folks, not just with Black people, because in that sense, you're really preaching to the choir. It's good for us to know what you want to do for our community. I definitely think that is needed, but you also need to communicate with others about what you're going to do for the Black community. So it's not a surprise if you actually do enact or are able to enact some of those laws. It's not a surprise because you have been telling everyone all along. And they are universal issues. They're not just Black issues. They may disproportionately affect Black people, but they're not just Black issues. Because if the Black community is disproportionately underemployed, that affects the whole economy. That means that we don't have enough money to put back into the economy, to buy homes, to buy commodities, that sort of thing. So that affects everyone, even if it is disproportionately affecting Black Americans. And so we really need to make sure that these things are universal issues that we're talking about, and not just segments of the society type of issues. We're actually here in DC, if you guys are local. A friend of mine and I are going to be hosting a discussion on February 29th at the Busboys and Poets on 5th and K, to have a debate, whether you're feeling the burn or whether you are with her, or if you're undecided. We're going to talk about the 2016 election. And we wanted to have it culminating Black History Month, so that we can also get through the South Carolina primaries. Because if you guys remember, in 2008, that's when everything turned nasty. That's where everything kind of changed in the 2008 presidential race, because Mrs. Clinton and her camp went completely left, and spewing rhetoric that many people thought was racist against President Obama, talking about, well, anybody can win South Carolina. Even Jesse Jackson won South Carolina. Things that were really disparaging against President Obama in a way that was deemed very racist or racially insensitive. And so that's when a lot of the tide turned. And that's when President Obama really locked up things and marched towards the nomination and eventually winning the election in 2008. So I'm very interested to see where things go. The presidential primary for South Carolina is February 27th. They're heading to Nevada first on this coming Saturday, I believe, to vote out there. And Nevada is an interesting state as well, because Nevada is very heavily Latino population. And one of the major unions in Nevada did not endorse anyone this year, which is for the first time they decided not to endorse a candidate. And so all the members of their union, which is tens of thousands of the culinary workers, so people who work inside the casinos in Nevada, that are working in the food industry in Nevada, they decided not to endorse as an entire union, that individuals can decide who they're going to vote for. And that is very interesting. And I'm very interested to see how that primary, or excuse me, that caucus turns out. Nevada has caucuses, South Carolina has primaries. And so, but if you watched the Republican debate on last week, you saw that it turned very nasty very quick. And something else that we saw that helped it turn nasty, and I think that it's going to turn this entire race nasty, is the death of United States Supreme Court Justice Antonin Scalia. Justice Scalia died on Saturday morning, of what they're saying right now is natural causes. And Justice Scalia, as you all may know, was the oldest or the longest serving justice on the Supreme Court. He had served for 30 years after being appointed to the bench by then President Reagan. And for the whole of his time, really, he has been has the moniker, he's been known as being a very strict constitutionalist, constitutional conservative, very right-wing, very an originalist point of view is what he is being described as. If you can look on many of his decisions were anti-affirmative action, anti-union. I believe he was in the majority for the Shelby County versus Holder decision, which gutted the Voting Rights Act. So many of his decisions, even though they were crystal clear, they were some of the more well-written opinions that I had the opportunity to read as a law student, but they were devastating to communities of color, quite frankly. Whenever you knew that Justice Scalia was writing and was going to give the opinion of the court, you knew, or you had a gut reaction that it was not going to be in favor for the communities that I serve as a social justice advocate, as a social justice lawyer. And so it was very disturbing when some of the decisions that he had came out. That being said, he's a human and he has a family, so I definitely send my regards to his family for the loss of him as a human being. But as a jurist, more often than not, he was his opinions were very devastating to the communities in which I serve. And so it's 6 one hand, half a dozen in the other for me. But the thing that I'm very concerned about is that in the wake of his death, members of the Judiciary Committee in the Senate had basically abdicated their job. They basically said that, well, we're going to wait until a new president is elected before we confirm a new justice, which is ridiculous. We have so many cases that we are waiting to be heard, to have opinions written, and that we need to have Supreme Court precedent, or at least the opportunity to have Supreme Court precedent on, so that we can move this country forward. And so for members of the judiciary to just abdicate their responsibilities is ridiculous. And to ask the president to abdicate his responsibility as well is also ridiculous. President Obama has the right and the obligation to appoint, or excuse me, to nominate persons to all federal bench positions, as he has done, and for the Senate to at least have a hearing and to vote up or down. Now, whether or not they confirm it, that's a different story that we can get to at a later time. But for you to say that you're not even going to entertain it is crazy. We posted on the Facebook page, Say What Now, Kay Crane, a piece by Greg Carr, who is a Howard Law professor, a really good piece that he wrote for ebony.com, talking about the death of Scalia and what it meant. And just kind of as an aside, I was very disturbed to see that there was only, if there was one, there were very few Black law professors or constitutional scholars that were consulted this past weekend when Justice Scalia, when the news was made that Justice Scalia had passed away. And I guess it kind of just goes back into the narrative that we need to be able to diversify our media. and making sure that every point of view is heard. Because even if, I mean, just period, that different points of view are important, and that there are Black constitutional law scholars out there, and that they need to be able to voice their opinions. And it may not be coming from a justice or social justice point of view, but the fact that they are there, and that they should they should have a platform to be heard, just like this is a platform for thoughts to be out there as well. So I would like to see us do that more, and not just on TV1. I saw that, of course, Roland Martin has his program, and that would be good. And he did discuss it today. But some of the other mainstream media programs also need to invite like a Charles Ogletree, like so many of my law professors that were at Howard, or some of them that are at GW and Georgetown, or wherever they are, to come and talk about this as well. Period. So I'm gonna get off of that rant, but that's what I think that they need to do. They need to do that quickly. Kind of flipping back a little bit, we had a question that, do I feel that polls are treating the Black vote monolithically? I think, well, one, I'm not convinced that they really poll Black people, honestly. That's been something that I would like to see a lot more data around, whether or not how many Black people are actually have participated in a poll. When I was living in South Carolina, I lived in South Carolina for 5 years. When I went to undergrad there, I never got a call about being a part of a poll. And there was at least one presidential election that I lived through in South Carolina, and they had the primary, and I was never called. I don't remember other people that I know being called for a poll. So I guess my question would be, how many Black people are they actually polling, period? Now, I do think that that there is the belief that all the Black people are going to go to the Democratic Party, which in that regard, I do think that they think we are monolithic, and that we all vote for, they assume that we're all going to vote Democrat, so there's no effort being made to speak to us from the Republican base. And as I tell my friends all the time, I have views that align with the Republican Party. I have views that also align with the Democratic Party. And so for one party not to reach out at all is, you're taking it for granted that I'm going to go to your opponent's party. So you should reach out to Black people and ask, what are you looking for? How can I serve you? But I think that many people of color, many Black people in particular, will be turned off by some of the rhetoric that has been said in this current race. I have a problem with folks talking about Mexican Americans and persons that are undocumented, as racist, or as rapists, and as thieves and this sort of thing. I have a problem with that. I have a problem with people talking about folks as illegal immigrants, period. If you're saying that their process, if they did not go by the quote unquote correct process, that's a different thing. We don't just call people illegals and just demean them out the rip. They are people, they are humans, they have lives, they have families. Let's try to give them at least their humanity and talk about the process in which they underwent to come to America, and talk about that and what you want to do to fix that. But don't talk about them in such disparaging remarks, particularly when it's well documented that some of the policies in which we have enacted here in America and some of our trade agreements have increased the propensity for people to leave their countries of origin and come to America however they can, to seek better opportunities, better employment opportunities, better living opportunities. So if we created this beast, you can't then blame the people who are trying to take advantage of the thing that you have created. You need to try to fix the issue that you created, and then move on from there. So you're victimizing the victims twice, once by creating the bad policies that put them in the bind in the first place, and then trying to victimize them again once they come over to reap the benefits, I guess, of what you created, by saying that they are no longer welcomed in this nation. And so if both parties really actually tried to reach out to all Americans and Black Americans in particular, I think that they would go a long way to trying to gain more of the Black vote. But if they're content with the 5 or 6 percentage of Black people that vote Republican, I mean, by all means, I guess. But it's a problem that they need to figure out and fix themselves. And until they do, Black people are either going to sit out or they're going to vote Democratic, and they're going to only have you're only going to have the state elections to win. And on that point, y'all need to make sure that you tell your friends to vote and look at these down ticket races. It kind of branches off of the discussion that we were just having about the vacancy on the Supreme Court, in that people are all up in arms of whether or not President Obama is going to nominate somebody, whether or not the Senate is going to confirm them. But the reason why we have this problem is because folks didn't do their job enough in 2010 and in 2014. These midterm elections are just as important as the presidential elections, sometimes even more so, because gubernatorial races, senatorial races, and of course House races are all taking place during these midterm elections. And when we sit home and things happen that the Senate needs to advise and give consent or not, that's when these things are won or lost in the midterm election. So I'm hoping that you are encouraging your family and friends to look at who's running for Senate in your state. There should be about 18 races across the country, in 18 seats for Senate available this year, and all of the House seats are up for election as well. So you need to check on that. Go to your Secretary of State's website and figure out who is actually running for office on the federal level as well as on the local level, and get involved and get knowledgeable about what's going on in your state. Because of course, all politics are local, and the more localized you get in these political races, the closer it is affecting you and your family. So I hope that you guys are paying attention to these races, because they're going to be crucial for us in the foregoing future, especially in these House races. We had a contentious race here for governor. And I know that there are other races across the country for governor that we really need to be paying attention to. And nowhere is that more evident than my home state of Michigan. And in Michigan is where I may conclude tonight, because the title of this show, of course, is Say What Now? And you can say what now? Like when those Prince tickets went on sale in May and I needed to grab some because I wanted to see him live, and I've been wanting to see him live for the last 2 years or so. Or it can be like, say what now? As in, say what? How is it that a whole city of people have been poisoned because the decisions of 2 people in the state of Michigan, and now 100,000 people have been drinking poison water, and people are just saying, oh, well, we just need to kind of move forward and give them bottled water, and that will be done. I am still really trying to process all my feelings about what happened in Michigan. I'm sure that you guys are aware about what's going on in Michigan, but just to kind of recap, in 2011, the state of Michigan legislature passed a bill, and the governor signed what's called an emergency manager. So if a system or a city is failing, then they're allowed to have an emergency manager appointed by the governor to take over the responsibilities, particularly the financial responsibilities of that state. So the city of Flint was taken over by an emergency manager, which cancels out in my limited view. So please let me know, you guys from Michigan, if anything that I said was incorrect. But from what I'm understanding, that the person who is appointed as an emergency manager for an entity takes it over. So the elected officials, they might as well just go home because they have no power once an emergency manager comes into town. And what this emergency manager did is the emergency manager decided in 2013 that they were going to switch the water from the water that they were receiving from the city of Detroit via Lake Huron to the water from Flint, the Flint River. Now, the city of Detroit gave them a whole entire year. They gave them a full year before they switched the water from Lake Huron to the Flint River. In that year, they did not test the water. They did not figure out whether the water was good, bad, or indifferent. They didn't do anything. They did not treat the water. They did not figure out anything. So once they made the switch, within a month, 30 days, people were complaining about this water looks funny, this water tastes funny. And the officials in Michigan did absolutely nothing, which is a problem in and of itself. But keep in mind, that was 2014. It is now 2016. Activists on the ground have been trying to figure out what they can do. The city of Detroit itself decided, hey, we can switch the water back if you guys want to. They were like, no, we got it, no problem. Y'all, basically go on, we're good, we're just gonna figure it out. So from 2014 to the end, I believe, of 2015, folks were still having this bad water. Now, the interesting thing about it, friends, is that everybody's talking about the lead, right? But according to the Centers of Disease Control and Prevention, you cannot taste, see, or smell lead in water. So it does not discolor your water. You cannot taste it in your water. So whatever the people in Flint were tasting and seeing and smelling was not lead. It was something else, right? So just imagine that everybody's talking about the lead, but nobody's talking about the other poisonous substances that had to be in the water that discolored and made the bad odor of this water that has made them sick. They saw an outbreak of Legionnaire's disease, which is caused by a Legionella bacteria, typically in water, where I believe 12 people have died and many more have been diagnosed, when it was typically only about 2 or 3 people per year that were diagnosed with this disease in the state of Michigan. You saw all the children in the city of Flint being diagnosed with elevated lead in their system, which is irreversible. It's just an outrageous set of circumstances in the city of Flint for a city that was already devastated. The city was already deserted. The city was already had high unemployment. So the opportunities that they had to be able to better themselves and do things was already made hard by the circumstances of their current circumstances. So this is on top of all of that. And the state of Michigan does not seem like they are doing enough. People from across the country have been asking me, so, hey, people back home in your state, what should we do? How should we do? We just really the impetus of this show so that I can talk to you all about my thoughts about certain things that have been happening in current events, and we can talk about it together, definitely. And so, but it's just outrageous. I'm still trying to really get the words out about how outraged I am, how these kids are going to have effects within their school, within their ability to earn a quality living for themselves, the families, how they're having to try to treat these kids and themselves. We like to focus on the kids because it makes this situation seem worse than it gives it more devastation. But the fact is that everybody in the city has been affected by this issue. Darren asks, should the Michigan state government reimburse the residents for Flint for the water bills and not charge them for? And that is the thing. Thank you, Darren. How are you going to charge me for water that I cannot use? I'm still trying to ask people this question and still trying to figure out an answer. And nobody has told me anything about this. The citizens of Flint were still being charged for this water, this undrinkable, unbathable in, cannot cook in it because it makes the matters worse, because it makes the lead worse. I cannot use my water. And you're sending me a bill. I don't care if it's a connection bill. I don't care if it is for, I don't care if the city plant has to shut down. You should not be charging me for water I cannot use. It's outrageous. And absolutely, Darren, they need to excuse me, they should absolutely reimburse these people for the money that they have spent on water that they cannot use, that has infected themselves and their children, that has damaged the brain of their children, that may diminish their ability to be educated and go on about their lives as they grow into adults. Absolutely, they should be reimbursed. And not only should they be reimbursed about that, you need to find other ways to ensure that they are able to live quality lives in the future. Elaine asks, what should the government do to remediate the long-term effects of the poisoning? And see, that's the thing, Elaine. We're still trying to figure out, like, there needs to be real science around this. Obviously, you guys know, or some of you all know, a science background. I was a nurse before I became a lawyer, and we really need to look at all of the potential and known effects of this lead poisoning and whatever the other poisons that the citizens of Flint have been under, have been placed under by drinking and using this poisonous water for the past for 16 or so months. Excuse me. So they absolutely should look at any and all things to remediate. So I don't know if it is having a scholarship fund so that all their students would have free education once they finish high school, and they can go to any college, any public college in the state of Michigan, tuition free for whatever degree they feel like they want to try to get, whether it is giving them fully funded special education classes for any of these students that may have learning disabilities because of this lead poisoning and other poisons that they've ingested, whether it is free child care for parents so that they can go to work and don't have to worry about somebody trying to take care of their kid while they're still at work, whether it definitely is making sure that they pay for new pipes for however long that takes for them to create said pipes, whether that it, whatever it is. They need to do this, and they need to get on the ball quickly to figure out these things. There needs to be a long-term study to figure out what all the state of Michigan does. And keep in mind, like I said before, I am a Michigan native, and so this may break the budget of Michigan. So sorry for you. Whatever the federal government's role was in this atrocity, they need to cough up some money also. But the people of Flint absolutely need to be taken care of for the long haul. This did not happen overnight. And so there needs to be taken care of. And yes, there are other instances where there have been there's been lead poisoning, or lead pipes, or lead paint, or lead based blinds, or whichever else across the country. So this is not just a Flint specific issue, but that's also the problem, is that we have environmental racism across the country, environmental justice issues across the country that we really need to address. And that might be one of the major things that upcoming civil rights lawyers tackle, is environmental justice issues. Now, of course, environmental justice or environmental lawyers have been around for a while now, obviously, but that might be something that other civil rights or social justice minded lawyers really need to tackle, because in the work that I do, I've been able to see this a little bit more, that there are so many environmental issues that are happening, particularly the increased propensity of Black and brown children to have asthma, particularly in urban centers, because of the poor air quality, the poor water quality, which makes a lot of kids sick. So outside of this lead toxicity issue, there's an overall environmental issue that we really need to tackle. Um, it, but folks really need to something needs to be done, and they need to really be done quickly about it. I think Elaine asked, let's see, is that Elaine? Yeah, I think Elaine asked, should the government, no, I'm sorry, is this an environmental taking? I think that was Darren. Is this a government taking what happened with the lead? I really need to look further around the law, with the law around it. I think there might be something to that, because their houses have they definitely have diminished in value, but I don't know if they completely lost their value, because, well, for one, they cannot resell their homes because nobody's going to take this encumbrance upon them that their pipes are full of lead and whatever other atrocities that are in those pipes because of the corroded water that was flowing through them for over a year. So I can't really directly answer that question, Darren, but it is absolutely their home values, whatever they were before, are completely diminished. Completely diminished now. Darren also writes, he feels that there should be a gubernatorial recall in Michigan for unexcusable and irresponsible behavior. And what are my thoughts on that? Yeah, I definitely agree on that. He has got to go, I think. I don't know how you can really govern a state. I mean, listen, he's been doing some crazy stuff up in Lansing since the time that he got there. Keep in mind that his attorney general, folks had to sue his attorney general over the affirmative action ban in the state of Michigan. He has had a lot of other problematic legislation passed in the state of Michigan since his election in 2010. So he's been problematic for a while for the state of Michigan and the citizens of Michigan that I'm deeply concerned about. But this really pushed it over the line, and I think he does need to go. Does he need to come back to my hometown of Ann Arbor? No, but he need to find somewhere to go. Because he definitely cannot run the state of Michigan. His and it's not about party. It really is about leadership. And if you allow citizens that are supposed to be under your watch to be poisoned, and you do nothing about it for a year until really it becomes a national problem because people are talking about it all across the country, that's a problem for me. And I don't think that you can lead. If he was a Democratic governor, I would be saying the exact same thing, because it's not about party. It's about how one does their job if they are the chief executive officer of a state. So, yeah, I think that he needs to go. And I think that it should not be a recall. I don't think that the state of Michigan should spend the resources to recall him. I think that he needs to resign. Now, of course, the ramifications of him resigning is that allegedly there's a more conservative lieutenant governor under him. And, it's the person you know versus the person you don't. But at this point in time, I can't rock with Rick Snyder. He has shamed our poor state in so many different ways. It's really bad. Let's see. Trying to answer some of these questions. Elaine asked, should the federal government come in and take over at this point? I don't know, Elaine. What do you think? I'm actually surprised that you're asking this question. I'm going to have to invite you on one of these next few episodes to talk about that. I don't know if I don't know if they can do that. I don't know if they should do that. I definitely think that the president has given some money, but I really think it's a drop in the bucket for what is needed from the federal government. I hope that whichever entities are best suited to be a part of this to be a part of this response should do so. I think that the CDC definitely needs to be up in Flint trying to help with this response. From the last report that I saw, they were not involved, and I watched the congressional hearing that officials from the EPA from Michigan, the professor at Virginia State who helped the young woman from Flint research this issue, stated that the CDC had not been up there yet. So if the CDC still has not been to Flint, they need to get there quickly. And I hope that the president sends somebody from the CDC up there to Flint quickly. But outside of having it be having the federal state of emergency being declared, I think that it was declared by the president. Outside of that, I'm not quite sure what more the federal government can really do, but it would be an interesting thing to look into. I just don't know about them completely taking it over. I don't know what precedent that was set, and I don't know what under what authority they would be able to do that, really. But it would be interesting to look up, I guess. Let's see. Well, we have so many more questions, but we only have about 2 minutes left. So I might save these questions for next week. We'll start a little bit earlier next week. I'm going to be in Tallahassee, Florida next week, speaking to students at Florida Coastal University School of Law. So thank you so much, you guys, for inviting me down to talk with you all for your Black History Month program for the Black Students Association down there. I'm really excited about going to Tallahassee. I don't think I've driven through there, but I actually have not been to Tallahassee. So I'm really excited about that. Thank you so much to the president of the Black Student Association for inviting me. So we'll start a little bit early. Hopefully that we can have some of the students from Florida Coastal join us to talk about some of the issues that they see as budding attorneys. And talk about some of the things that are happening during the week. Maybe we'll get a nomination to the Supreme Court from the president. That will definitely be a talking point for us, and see what other foolishness people will be talking about regarding Black history, because I'm sure there will be some. We will recap the Nevada caucuses and the South Carolina primaries from the Republicans, and we'll talk about whatever else you guys hit me up. With the minute that we have left, thank you so much for joining us on the first episode of Say What Now. I'm super excited. I've been talking about this all day with some friends of mine. We're going to work out this lighting and everything. So please send me your questions and things that you think that we should talk about to Say What Now, Say What K Crane, Say What Now, I think, at gmail.com, or you can tweet me. I definitely know the Twitter handle at Say What K Crane. You can hit me up on Facebook at Say What K Crane. Let me know how you like the show, things that I should talk about, things that we need to work on, and we're going to work this out together. Thank you so much for spending a little bit of your night with me, and have a great evening. See you later.